Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to life.
Hey everybody, welcome to Made for Mondays. This is episode 167.
Hard to believe.
It's
We've
wild.
done this that many times.
Yeah, started from the bottom, now we're here. This is a summer edition, of course, and we are joined with everybody's special,
Yeah, but we have a special
but
guest.
a very special guest today.
A special guest.
My name's Sam.
You're on staff.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
Hey, that's what I'm
so
saying.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no,
Okay, I thought you were
yourself.
trying to include yourself in special.
no. When you said that from stage yesterday, I was like, I need to make a disclaimer that it's not
You are not the special
Yeah.
guest.
Correct. Okay.
You are special.
Yes.
right.
God's masterpiece.
Yep.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
Yes.
But specific to the podcast today,
Yes.
there's someone more special.
Yes,
Right.
for sure.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, so we'll put a lot of pressure on Stephanie. But my name's Sam. I'm the creative pastor here.
Are you a creative pastor?
Very creative. I also like to say I have a lot of people that I get to work with that are creative, and I'm not as creative. So thank you for
Fair.
bringing me down on this Monday morning. Who are you?
Hey, I'm Jamie. I'm just one of the pastors.
Yeah.
Yep.
My name is Lauren. I am on staff. I am the Next Gen small group director,
Yeah, you are.
and our special guest.
Yes.
I'm Stephanie. Thank you guys for having me. I serve here.
Yep.
And my internship here just ended last week. So now I'm just a member.
Figure
So,
it out.
Serving,
so where do you
living.
serve?
In Next Gen.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, all ages. So
Okay.
in BK and for real.
Okay, very cool.
That's awesome. So a lot of things have been going on. Not just this series. We're going to get into that.
Yeah,
But
not yet. It's too early for that.
but it's summertime. I'm just wondering, we can do a weekend chat, but also it's like almost the end of August. So maybe even if there was something that you just really, really loved this summer that you did. So yeah, what happened over the weekend? Or just you're like, I didn't have a lot going on this weekend, but this also happened.
So my weekend was a bit of a mixed bag. So I had a great weekend. My sister and brother-in-law came to visit. That doesn't happen about once a year. That was very nice. Had everyone over for dinner last night. My brother, his wife, their adult son with special needs, and our kids and Esther, and it was just great.
What'd you have for dinner? You guys usually have pretty awesome stuff.
John smoked, I don't even know how many racks of ribs, and then we had
Wait, he posted a video today. Was that actually what he made?
probably, I didn't see the video, but
Oh my goodness.
it was amazing.
It looked incredible.
Yeah, and then we made all the corn on the cob and potato salad and all the things that go with it. It was really a good meal.
Yeah.
And then watermelon and
Ooh, that sounds
it
delicious.
was great. It was really, really fun. My uncle came too, so the house was full, and Esther cried a lot. I don't want to call her out, but she's only 4 months old.
Man,
you know?
that baby.
Yeah, she
But
definitely.
wow, she peed on my living room floor.
Yeah, she was hurting the vibe.
Yeah, so
cool.
just cramping things a little bit,
Yeah.
Esther. Just get it together.
Esther, if you're listening, come on.
She's
Time to
listening.
grow up.
Get it
Yeah,
together.
Grandpa's telling you
Yeah.
it's time to get it together.
Yeah.
4 months is enough time. So,
boy.
so that was great. That was super fun. But the bad part was Thursday or Friday. I'm losing track of time. I broke out, and I don't know if it was poison oak or hives or what,
no.
but
Whoa.
like I ended up having to go to urgent care Friday.
Jamie,
I don't know what's going on with me. So the highlight of the summer bookended by two medical events.
yeah. The spider bite.
Hospitalized by a spider bite, and then urgent care for some kind of freakish thing going on with my arms, neck, legs, just a mess. So
Yeah.
I'm now on steroids, prednisone, to try to calm it down.
Oh, you get swole, though, maybe. You can hit the gym
Yeah.
up if you're on those roids. Take advantage.
The gym.
Full advantage.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think prednisone swells you in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
Not
hey, listen.
the
Those gains are gains.
may gain
boy.
some weight.
there
That's
you
probably
go.
about it. Yeah,
Were you doing yard work or something that you
I
feel like you
was.
could have picked up some of that?
Very
get you.
little, like 15 minutes of yard work. I was getting ready to go to a concert on Wednesday night, and did a little bit of yard work. And then
Okay.
Thursday afternoon, I noticed my arms starting to itch. And then by Friday, it just blew up.
Oh man,
I look like the
You have
Elephant
very
Man
sensitive
Friday
skin.
after. I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the spiders are attracted to you.
And spiders are attracted to
Oh,
me.
that's all right. Well, is it still itchy?
Yes. It's
Okay,
painful,
sorry.
painful and itchy.
Well, thanks for battling through for us.
Hey, you've battled through worse, Sam.
I really have. You ever heard of allergies?
Oh, yeah. I have. Yeah.
I've had them.
I know you have.
Tough. Anyways, ladies, any kind of fun activities over the weekend or just life in general?
So Saturday was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's a big one too.
Turned 30.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So one of my friends flew in from California for the weekend.
Oh, how
and
fun.
Her job was to keep me out of the house on Saturday while Cody set up. I didn't know what. I knew something was happening, but I didn't
Yeah.
know what was happening. So we were out all day just going around Norfolk. And I came home around 5 o'clock and I walked in and there were strangers cooking in my kitchen. And I was like, hi. I was so confused. But he hired chefs to come
Oh my
make a
gosh.
meal. We had a bunch of friends over. It was
That's
a
amazing.
really, really
Wow.
great time. Amazing food, amazing cake.
What kind of food did they cook?
I was gonna ask.
Do you know?
They
Do you
had like
remember?
charcuterie board, appetizers, salads, roast vegetables, potatoes, steak,
Oh my
then
goodness.
some vegan options and some
Nice.
chicken.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotta have that.
Yeah, no party without a vegan.
What did he
Yeah,
call
it was
what he made for Megan?
Polo pescatarian.
Yes.
So just like not red meat.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Which-
gave her a very fancy name, which she
Yes.
loved. She loved
Yes.
being called out in front of everybody.
Yeah.
Lauren, anything else you want to share about Megan?
No,
we're
not today.
Oh, okay.
Just that I love her a lot.
Yeah.
Love you, Meg.
That's awesome. So birthday.
Yeah, it was a really great time. Some bonding, some new experiences, and
Yep.
That's awesome.
I was there, is why
Uh-huh.
You guys
Yeah.
are
Yes.
giggling back and forth.
I
but
got the invite. So that was a lot of fun.
very cool. Well, that's good. Lauren, anything fun?
Besides Stephanie's birthday, which was definitely the highlight because that was a really good time. Friday, you guys, I went to one of my favorite places in the whole world. It's
What's
a very
that?
exclusive members only club
Whoa.
known as Costco. Don't know if you're familiar
Oh,
with it.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Heard of it. Heard of it.
Yep.
French.
So I went with Caleb. We were doing our, shopping. We get to the food court, which
Yeah.
is often a highlight. We usually go for
All the
a slice
samples?
of pizza or a chicken bake. We like to trick ourselves into thinking we spent or saved money on our cheap food court food after we just,
Yeah. All right, when you say food court, you're just talking like
At the end.
At the end of the checkout line,
Yeah,
just
food
that
court.
like there's a couple.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's what else do you
think
call
court,
it?
Court is very generous of what you're giving
Food
it. I'm thinking like a
area.
mall food court. Like there's a lot
Well,
of options.
they have rearranged it a little bit now.
Oh, okay.
So it is more
well, that's
court
true. I shouldn't
like.
speak out of turn. I didn't know that.
Well, I go to put my order in and I see there is a new menu item. If you've never had Costco soft serve ice cream, you're missing out. Okay. Vanilla is the best. It's like Busch
I've
Gardens.
never had it.
It's like Busch Gardens
neither.
ice cream. I don't know. I don't know what they do to it. It's the best.
Wow.
Well, they have a summer flavor, I guess, that's brand new. It's strawberry. I don't like strawberry ice cream. I'm a chocolate ice cream kind of person, but I didn't have any other options. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna send it. And you guys,
Nice.
this is a game changer. It was so good, so
full
good that Caleb tried some and was like, and got one to go because
Wow.
it was that good. So just letting you know, that was the second highlight of my weekend.
I also heard like their pizza is supposed to be.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, they give you the giant, like, big as your head slices, and
Yeah.
you don't know.
New York style. No, I've never had it. I just see people carrying it out all the
Yep.
time. I'm like, it seems like
I've never been to Costco.
Neither have I.
wow.
Oh,
It is fun.
man.
For the most part.
Man, that's part of my personality, I
Yeah.
think, is
I mean, I
my
know a lot
love
of people who
for
are huge
Costco.
fans. I just never have
Yeah.
been.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's very good. I had a pretty busy weekend, if you guys are asking. Yeah, I will
yes.
share my
Oh, hey, Sam, what did you do this weekend?
And I'm the host, but I like to share a few things. One, got a haircut.
Wow.
Looking
Thank you,
good.
Adrian. She's also part of our production team. She does great. I played. Oh, I had my football fantasy draft on Friday night.
That's a big deal.
It was a huge deal. I'm also the commissioner. I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm hosting this, commissioner of the league, which is called the league,
Yeah. Creative pastor,
as they say. Yeah.
dad,
Yep.
husband,
Host.
host.
Man.
Yeah. Just so many things.
A lot. So haircut, fantasy football, that was awesome. Had a great time with a bunch of my friends. And then Saturday morning played pickleball again. So
Again.
this thing is really starting to
Yeah.
roll downhill.
Yeah.
People are picking it up, picking
Yeah.
up paddles.
It's a national trending thing.
It is.
Yeah.
We had seven guys out on Saturday, which is actually a terrible number for pickleball.
Need an even
Isn't
number.
don't you play in doubles or singles?
You can doubles are the best because then you're not like going crazy.
Yeah.
And so you got 3 guys just like hanging out.
Yeah.
So
no good.
so yeah, if you want to play pickleball, we're starting. I
Absolutely.
Do
think
you have to be
Yeah.
over a certain age?
apparently
It's-
30 because I think Stephanie
It's
plays.
for all ages.
It is
It
for all
really
ages?
is. It is.
Oh, okay. Sam,
Fastest growing sport in America.
I know
hear.
it is. I heard
That's what
that.
they say.
Stephanie's in a league. I don't know if
I
she's
am
going
in
to
a
Really?
say
league.
it, but
Yes, my husband and I are in a town league in Portsmouth. And
So I saw a story not too many weeks ago on the news about malls, big department stores being converted into
Yes.
indoor pickleball courts.
Yep.
Wow.
I support
Whole
it.
grocery stores.
I
and
support
everything.
it.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to, wants to invest in pickleball,
Yeah.
I'd be
Are you-
okay. I mean, I host.
Are you an
I'm
investor?
commissioner. I would.
You're not
I'd be a
sol-
manager.
you're not soliciting
I'll be a
funds, are
pickleball
you?
manager, if you will.
I don't think soliciting funds is a great idea.
No, I wouldn't say soliciting, as more just asking.
Or inspiring. Inspiring.
Yeah, I don't know the definition
Yeah.
of that, but it's totally 2 different things for sure.
Yeah.
But what Stephanie's not telling you, is they play in a league that much older people and they keep winning, and I think that's wrong.
I don't think that's fair.
Is that right?
There is one team. We have beaten them twice now. The record is very much in their favor, but I think we have a strong chance to win this season.
Yeah.
We got second last season.
Uh-huh.
So we'll see how it goes. But
Nice.
There's another backstory to this because we got all the time in the world. We got things to talk about, but
Yeah.
this is important. Pastor Doug filled in for you.
yes.
Oh,
I was
And-
out of town one time and Pastor Doug filled in with Cody in this league.
But it's
How-
supposed to be
how'd
a
it go?
co-ed league.
Oh,
So they played for fun. It didn't
And they
count
won it
towards our
all.
record.
okay.
It didn't on the books. Those counted as
It counted
two
in Doug's
losses for
record,
us.
believe me.
That's fine.
He had a trophy and everything. He was like super proud of himself. But pickleball's a lot of fun. So if you guys are looking for a sport to get out there, you burn a lot of calories too. Says my Apple Watch. Okay, so that was a great weekend. We're doing the Bible reading challenge as a church. We've said this a lot, but if this is the first time listening or first time hearing this, we're reading through the New Testament. But again, you don't have to start in Matthew today. Like, you can start where we're starting because the most important thing is that we're reading scripture together, the
Right.
same scriptures together.
Yep.
So in saying that, have you guys had anything maybe this past week that jumped out to you from the scriptures?
Stephanie.
Yeah.
How did you know that?
We very rarely plan on this podcast,
Yeah.
but this came up beforehand.
It feels good when you
Yeah.
plan ahead.
I don't like it.
Yeah, so one of the things that jumped out at me was some verses in Romans 7 that were brought up at camp over the summer. And so when we were reading through it, it just kind of jumped out at me again. And it's where Paul is talking about, like, I always do what I don't want to do and what I
Yep.
do want to, all of that back
Yep.
and forth. And he's basically saying, like, I don't want to keep sinning, but, like, I continue to sin. And when I don't want to sin, like, it's just the struggle we have with sin. But then Romans 8 verse 1 is therefore there is no condemnation in Christ.
Yeah.
And that just really jumped out at me because Paul is talking about his sin struggle and how he goes back and forth and he doesn't want to keep sinning. But then right away the next thing is we all struggle with sin, but there's no condemnation in Christ. Whatever
Yep.
you've done, whatever you will do, God loves you exactly who you are.
Yeah.
So it was just a really comforting that Paul struggled with this too, but
Yeah.
I do have that reassurance that that's not the end of the story.
Yeah, the balance is, right, striving for holiness, but recognizing that your relationship with Christ is not based on that performance.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Romans is my favorite book of the Bible.
Yes.
So I will always have just a highlight to share because I just think it's so impactful. And I think especially the reading from last week is so fitting for our conversation today. But yeah, Romans 8, the end of Romans 8 for me, where Paul is just talking about how scandalous gospel of Jesus is and how nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. I think so often, especially for people who've been following Jesus for a long time, like the scandal of grace and generosity often like it doesn't impact us like it should. But man, you read through that Romans 8 and it'll bring you to tears every single time.
When you said as you guys keep adding age to your life, I just turned 30. I just turned 39. I think grace gets even more difficult to understand because you're like, I'm such a mess.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
And I think that's what Paul was writing about is like, I mean, as his life went on, he had all these experiences and he still can write back and be like, man, thank you for that. Like, thank goodness for this grace. Right.
So, and nothing can separate you from the love of God.
Yeah.
And then in Romans 10, I mean, that's the simple gospel. If you believe in your heart and you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, like that's it. Period. And I just think it's, what Jesus came to do is so beautiful. It's so simple. And I feel like that really laid a groundwork and a foundation for our conversation, just to remember who Jesus invites into his family. And it's everybody.
Yep.
Period. So,
Very good, Lauren. Yep. That's a good breakdown of, great catch, of the scripture. So, catch up with it if you need to, but really try to stay in line with where we're at. Coming into this week, we post that in the outlet. You can sign up for that on our website or through our app. You can find on our social media what we're reading this week. So there's a bunch of places to find that. So don't use that as an excuse of, I don't know where we're at.
Romans is a great time to jump in. Let me tell you, it's
okay. We get it, Lauren. You like Romans.
I love it.
It's almost over. We're going to be done with it in a couple days.
The end is still good too. I'm just saying.
Well, all right. Actually, Romans 16 has become one of my new favorite chapters.
See? Wow. So coming up. Coming right up.
Yep. Exciting. I think that's this week.
Yeah. I think it
should be over the weekend.
Yep.
So today, also remember if you're listening, you can send in these what the whats.
You're a singer. You could do a version of
It's Not Sunday.
Oh jeez. You gotta get paid extra for that?
No, not extra. Just you gotta save the vocals, Okay. People hear you sing all the time. They're like, oh gosh, all the time this guy singing. So you just gotta save a little bit.
Okay.
Anyways, if you have a what the what question, you can send those in. Usually it's Jamie's family sending stuff in, so we'd like other.
It
people
is
too.
usually. So let's mix it up a little.
Yeah. So just anybody, just any question you want to ask. If you need
Anything.
pickleball rules,
right?
Man.
Food. It doesn't have to just be like theological.
You could even send in recommendations. What do you do with hives?
That's great. Or what's a good steroid?
Yeah, great steroids to choose from.
What can steroids do for you?
Yeah.
Oh man.
And how can they hurt you? Okay. All right, good. I'm glad we could laugh a little bit this morning because we are tackling some pretty tough conversations and topics throughout this polarizing series. We just did our 4th week yesterday.
Yep.
So Jamie, you tackled the extremely difficult conversation of the transgender community.
Yeah.
One of the things that I loved about this conversation is that you stated from the stage, like, you are the pastor, but you are still learning like a ton in this. Like, there's a lot of things that you don't know, which is pretty rare, I think, from people on stage to declare. So I'm just wondering, like, pastors don't have all the answers, but a lot of them walk around like we do, or you do have those kind of answers and stuff. So can you kind of debunk that myth and just how you've been approaching all of these conversations as a learner instead of just an expert?
Well, if 20 years of ministry hasn't proven that I don't know much, I don't know that saying that here is going to change anyone else's mind. But the 11th commandment is thou shalt keep it real. And I mean, things are just changing so rapidly in our world that, when I graduated from college in 1991.
I was born in 1991.
I know. I'm the
know.
oldest here by a lot. So,
You mean in this room?
In this room, for sure.
Definitely.
Yes. So anyway, just to say, like, I mean, this wasn't even a blip on the radar. So there was no college class on, Transgender 101. That was not one of my Bible college classes. And so, yeah, I mean, the world changes, and the things that I was supposed to be taught in college are to be able to read scripture and use it to read the times. And I think, those principles were super helpful. But yeah, the specific issues that we all deal with, they just rapidly change. And so, and it, it's unsettling for many. It doesn't change truth. We'll talk more about that a little bit later, I'm sure. But it doesn't change truth, but it does change how we interact and respond and discuss and all those things. So, yeah, I've been on a relatively short, and I talked about this in the message, like early on, all of the debate around transgender, for the most part, I just disengaged because it's just another thing to try to wrap your head around. And I have a very small mental capacity. So I just kind of ignored it for the most part. And then over the last 6 months, I've really kind of leaned into just trying to learn as much as I can. And so, yeah, I wanted to just be on the record and say I'm a student, and I feel that way about 90% of everything in life. I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah, so us three who have not taught on stage for this series, just wondering like what your guys' take have been from just the posture of those that have been teaching. That wasn't in your notes.
No,
so
that's
just
a great question.
That's just a host question I'm coming up with, on the fly.
You're really getting good at this. Heather better look out.
Yeah. She's got to still write the questions, though.
But not the ones you make up,
That's true.
unless you have a separate script of ones that she gave you. Okay.
That'd be awesome, though.
That would be.
Now you've forgotten the whole question I asked.
No, yeah, I remember.
Okay,
How
great.
do we
what's
receive?
Yeah.
I mean, what else can you ask for? There are people who present themselves as experts or know-it-alls on, different topics. But especially for this series, how I receive is through humility.
Yeah.
And I think if, someone is truly seeking to learn or truly seeking to be challenged or stretched, that's exactly the posture that I've been receiving of, hey, like, probably you're going to be offended or stretched or challenged. And I think that's so good because at 31, if I think I've arrived, or if I think like this is where I've landed and I'm never going to grow ever again, that is not
It's almost
growth.
a sad prospect.
That's not growth.
Right.
That is sad. That is that's kind of bleak. Like
Yeah.
what do I have to look forward to? So that's kind of my take.
Good.
Yeah, Ted Lasso is one of my favorite shows, and if there are other viewers who are fans of Ted Lasso, like I'm sure the quote came to their mind as well, the be curious, not judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when you said that, that's what came to my mind, and trying to approach those situations with like, I don't understand this topic,
Right.
but I'm curious about it, instead of just jumping to conclusions and making
good.
judgments.
That is good.
Yeah, I've been super surprised because we read the messages usually on Wednesdays and we're like 3 weeks ahead of schedule most of the time when the teaching team's doing awesome. But it's been really crazy that I'll sit in the service on Sunday and I'll feel a completely different way than when you first read it. And that's been that thing with me, is like the curious, kind of thing. And it's weird where I'm getting judgmental like in my heart. When I was like, oh my gosh, why am I feeling like that's weird? I need to dig into why I'm feeling that. And I think as a whole in the church, this was our 4th week. We've had some really good conversations. Some of them have been very difficult through emails or through sit down conversations. But, and I don't want to jinx us, I would applaud us. I think it's been pretty healthy. A lot of people disagree about different things that we're talking about. But into week 4, I'm just wondering, like, have you felt that? I mean, you've probably, Jamie being not just one of the pastors, like the senior pastor.
Yeah.
Do you feel that? Like, do you feel like it's been healthier than what we maybe assumed it was going to be?
I think so. I tend to be the tip of the spear on the negativity thing. So, I've had to field a fair amount of, I won't say hostile, but people who are just responding against what
Yes.
we're talking about. And in the way I'm kind of wired, I tend to hang on to critical stuff. I act like I don't really care, but it just
sits with you.
spins me up, right? So those have kind of weighed very heavily on me over the last month. But if I think about it, there's been way more supportive comments and people even just thanking us for challenging them. And so I was telling my sister yesterday that overall I'm very proud of our church for leaning into this, because there's been a few people, there's been some things, but overall I feel like people are leaning in and trying to at least expand their understanding on these topics, which that's all we're asking. We're not even asking anyone to change their opinions on things or their convictions, which is it's stronger. Like, what does the Bible say? But to lean into how do I love Jesus, even if someone is on a sinful track, like something that the Bible is very clear on. How do I still engage that person with the love of Christ? That's a really good thing to wrestle with. And I think a lot of people in the church genuinely are, even if it's making them a little uncomfortable. And I said this at the beginning, but it's worth repeating. Like, I've been stretched, I've been made to feel a little uncomfortable at times. And I'm grateful for it. So,
Yeah, I mean, walking into that room, I feel more comfortable than I have been uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking of the auditorium, just through a message, through a service. So it's been a nice little mix-up for me personally, if we're just talking about that, like to just kind of really get in to be like, why do you feel this way? And what does Scripture have to say about it? And then let's have an open conversation that can be healthy. So that's been really good. Specifically yesterday, just around transgender, you shared several kind of spotlighted people that have been in the news, some companies that have been in the news, those kind of things. And I'm just wondering, you said that it didn't really grab your attention when that stuff was happening, but that shifted when their reality collided with the reality of one of your high school best friends. And you said, when you know someone, it changes how you talk about the issue.
yeah.
You quoted Dr. Preston Sprinkle, which we love around here, by saying, if you've met one transgender person, you've met one transgender person. So how have you all seen the truth of those statements play out in this week's topic, as well as maybe the others we're addressing?
I think empathy is difficult, especially when you don't have any skin in the game. So I think like I can do kind of some of the same things like that you were sharing of just like, I don't have the capacity to like start diving into various issues. But when a relationship intersects your life of someone who disagrees with you, of someone from the transgender community, then all of a sudden, like burying your head in the sand or being apathetic or, just keeping on with your life, that's not an option. And so I think people have like two options, either like relationship or personal experience kind of tends to put your attention and your empathy towards an issue, a cultural issue. We're talking about the transgender community this week. So, or if you just happen to be a very empathetic person, you'll get to that route by just understanding that when we're talking about this topic, it's not just a topic. We're talking about people.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the,
Yeah. I think
idea.
it's not much different than people, the keyboard warriors, who are, launching stuff, who would never act that way face to face. And I think we talk about issues in the same kind of way because there's not a person in front of us that's being impacted by the thing we're talking about. It's very easy to talk about it insensitively.
Yes.
And yesterday I was surprised, encouraged, maybe not the right word, although just to know, like, the things that we're talking about are so relevant and matter so deeply to people. I had so many conversations with folks yesterday who said, I've a family member, I have a friend, I have some friends whose kid or, whatever, like this issue that we talked about yesterday, these people that we were talking about, this community of folks, is way more pervasive than many understand.
Yeah.
And so there were many in the room yesterday who were just grateful to have, I had many people say, like, I'm going to share this with this friend and this loved one and this parent and whatever. So, like, to know that and that was my whole goal, is talk about things that our culture is talking about. How do we not do that? And so I just think it's so more relevant than maybe some people even realize.
I agree.
Yeah, I have a trans non-binary sibling, so just leading up to this series, I've been bouncing ideas off of them, like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts on it? And I love the quote that if you've met one transgender person, you've met one transgender person, because they've been very open and honest with me about, like, well, this is what I think, but here are also some of the conversations that are being had in the transgender community.
Yep.
So, like, you can talk to one transgender person and you can get their story and their perspective, but understanding that the next transgender person you meet might have a different take on it.
Yep.
It's really important.
Even who is included. Like, there's been conversations that I've listened to on podcasts and whatnot where some in that community will say, only if you have gender dysphoria do you qualify into this. And then there are other people, no, it's just how you're feeling, and it's way more fluid than just gender dysphoria. So even within the community itself, there's a lot of disagreement even about who's included in this group of folks. And Stephanie, would it be okay to, you said quickly about your sibling, but can you define that just a little bit for folks that wouldn't understand, like, what is non-binary and
Yeah, so my sibling doesn't identify as male or female. Non-binary, I guess, just literally, like, it's not a binary situation. It's not one or the other.
Right.
There's another option.
Yeah.
And for their personal experience, like, we had the conversation, what pronouns do you prefer? And, like, is sibling the non-gendered, like, term? Is there another one? And like I said, it's so personal because they said, their pronouns are they, them. If I say sister, they're not offended. I try to say sibling just because, it is non-gendered. And so I want to make that effort.
Yeah.
But also they said, they have a dog that's like their little baby. And they always say, like, I'll always be Vader's mommy. So it's just like, it's so situational.
Yeah.
Very personal. And
and so therefore, how you engage in this topic is a very personal experience for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did send the link to them, and, like, I would love to get your feedback and just talking to them, like I said, leading up to this, to, run my thoughts through their perspective. Like, they're so appreciative that our church is having this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say.
Yeah.
But just the conversations we've had have been so, so, so good. And they, like, told me to, tell your pastor that I appreciate this so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
Jamie, if you could run questions by the host before you ask those next
Oh, yeah, sorry.
it's fine. I mean, it was a good question, so I'll allow it. So it is such a personal thing. We did a series called "What in the World." How long ago was that? That was
the spring of 22.
Yeah, so a little bit ago. But it was all about, like, what is truth, right? So why is having a good understanding of truth and how it's defined, like, why is that important?
Yeah, and so I spent a little time on this yesterday. I tried to be as clear as I could, but I feel as if maybe I was misunderstood a little bit. So to describe what is happening in our post-truth world, and that's I am not saying there is no truth. I'm just saying how people are viewing truth has changed. And so what I said in that message back in the spring was that truth is determined by conscience and consensus, how I feel about something, and if there's a community of people around me who can affirm what I feel, And if that criteria is met, then I have arrived at my truth. And you hear that used all the time. You have your truth. I'm glad your truth is working for you. We're very selective in where we use that. You wouldn't want your doctor probably to read the results of a test and say how they feel about it. You might want some doctor collaboration on it. But we're a little selective in how we're doing that. But generally speaking, culturally speaking, that is how people are arriving at truth. And I think it's important to understand that. I'm simply acknowledging that is how people are arriving at truth today. And it's important to understand that because when you hear someone say, I have my truth, you have yours, that's what you're hearing. And if you don't know what's behind that, I think it's helpful to know what's behind that. That what that means is this person is feeling very strongly about this, and there are people around them who probably share that strong opinion. I'm not saying that is therefore truth. I'm just saying that is how people are arriving at that. And that is what those words mean today. The meaning of truth has changed a little bit. Not that truth has changed, how we define it has changed. And so I just think that's an important framework. And so, at the end, and I don't want to jump ahead because I don't have permission from the host. At the end of the
I'll allow it.
At the end of the message, I went back to the previous memory verse from John 8:31 and 32, where Jesus defines truth as himself, like he is the truth, and that truth in him is what sets people free. So I think, I'm acknowledging this is how people are defining truth, and then I'm also pointing to Jesus as truth.
Agree.
Everybody good over there? All right.
Good job.
There was a lot of nodding and good. So
All right.
But I also think it makes it difficult when you're on a stage. I mean, you could say it till you're blue in the face. I'm just saying what this is.
Right.
But people are going to hear it as like, oh, that's what he believes now.
Right.
Like,
So
that's been the crux of this whole series.
This whole series, the sticking point for most people, most of the angry emails that I'm receiving are exactly that. Because I'm acknowledging something, the thought is, therefore I'm endorsing it. But I think acknowledging where people are, you can't meet someone where they are if you don't acknowledge where they are. And so it's important to be able to say, like, this is where people are, and we have to figure out as followers of Jesus, how can we meet folks where they are? And if you can't acknowledge where they are, you will never meet them where they are.
I think part of the struggle is just the novelty of this approach to teaching from stage, because I think historically and traditionally, when somebody is up on the stage or up in the pulpit,
It's thus saith the Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think just the way that, the teaching team has approached the series is not in the traditional sense of these are the things that you must do. These are the things that are true. It's been a different approach to that. And I think we might be feeling some of the tension of the traditional teaching way and, just how you guys have approached it. So that might be.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it.
Too.
I think, the framework that we're trying to do is acknowledging where people are on either side. And the one truth that we're holding on to throughout is that we know for sure, like some of these topics certainly are not covered scripturally. Not all. That's not true for all of them, but some of them they're not necessarily spoken of scripturally. So how do we do the one thing that we know we ought to do as followers of Jesus, which is to love people the same way that Jesus loved us, and to have enough confidence that I don't have to actually tell you what to do.
Right.
I can trust that the Holy Spirit can guide you in what you should do. And honestly, I don't even know, like if someone were to come to me with some scenario, how am I supposed to know the proper answer to that? It's not always super clear.
Right.
And so part of the answer ought to be, how is the Holy Spirit leading you in that? How do you navigate that by leaning into who God is?
Right.
And that was yesterday, when I talked about, like, if you're feeling somewhere internally that you're not matching up with something externally, give yourself some space and time to lean into who God is and and ask to hear from him. If he is engaging with us, which I believe he is, I think that's a really good encouragement. Like, that is a thus saith the Lord.
Yeah.
God does want to speak
Yes.
to you and reveal himself to you. So ask him.
Right.
And I think that's sometimes as biblically concrete as I can get. And
Yes.
it's unsettling because it doesn't give a 1, 2, 3, but I think it's actually a pretty solid biblical answer.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good. Let's lean into that a little bit. So you had some time yesterday in your message. You get about 35 minutes to preach. Sometimes you go 40, but that's
Thanks.
for another day to discuss.
I am the senior pastor.
That's true.
A little discretion.
But there were a couple definitions and terms that you used that you just couldn't get into all of the details yesterday.
Yeah.
So you were defining like biological sex and referenced the term intersex.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, like, because we have time today and all the time that we would possibly need.
Yeah.
Like, what did you mean by that? What is meant by that when you hear the word intersex?
So, this was part of my learning curve for this particular message. I was on my way to a chiropractor appointment up in Newport News about a month ago, and a news story came on interviewing someone that did a documentary on intersex people. And just in saying that, you know what I was listening to? NPR.
Yeah.
So that's what old people listen to in the car. So this whole conversation just kind of blew me away, particularly how it intersects with. See the little play on words that I just did? Intersects with this topic of transgender, because the bottom line of what makes an intersex person is it's a person who is born with some atypical outcome of like extra X chromosomes, or the one person on the story that I was listening to was a person who was born with she came out looking externally as a woman, but she had no uterus or ovaries, and she had recessed testes. So normally the baby would be born, the doctor would say, "Congratulations, it's a girl," and that would be the end. That would have been the normal course of things for this person, except the parents had the baby's DNA tested prior to birth, and the chromosome test came back male.
Wow.
And so because she comes out looking like a girl, anatomically, they did further testing and found the recessed testes. And the doctors encouraged the parents to have them removed because they said that they could become cancerous. Turns out the chance of that is like between 1% and 5%, so a pretty small percentage. But the parents went along with the doctor's advice, had the testes removed. And so now this girl has no organs that produce hormones because no ovaries, now no testes. So is dependent on synthetic hormones for the rest of her life. And her perspective was, how come a doctor got to decide what my sex was going to be when I was born with both parts? And I get like this is super rare. But even if you're looking at small percentages, when you're talking about billions of people, it's a lot of people. And so it's still real people. And this person felt as if she had been mutilated by the medical community against her will. And now politicians are passing laws that this is just kind of a fascinating thing. So the laws that are being passed to prevent minors from having surgical intervention on their gender, which overall I would say I support the restrictions of that, because that's a permanent solution to what could be transitory, temporary situation. Not everyone's going to agree with me on that, I get. However, most of those laws that are being passed make exceptions for intersex people. And so this woman's perspective, again, was, so minors can't have decisions about the gender that they want to be, but doctors can decide on an intersex person what gender they are going to be. And she took it as just kind of a slap in the face that politicians are passing laws acknowledging that I exist and not caring that I am an intersex person. So just hearing that whole conversation, I mean, we definitely didn't cover that in Bible college. So I was just kind of blown away by that.
Yeah.
And it does speak into the national debate around a lot of these laws. So the hormone blockers and all the things that are being used for the transgender community, these laws that are being passed, it's almost like the abortion laws that we talked about last week. There are some unintended consequences where intersex people are finding it very difficult to get the treatments that they require that were imposed upon them by the medical community. And now the laws that are being passed are making it difficult for them to get access to the care that they need for the condition that was created for them against their will by a medical community.
Right.
I mean, that's just crazy.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was, I didn't have time to go into that yesterday morning.
And honestly, you shouldn't, like, that is another example of, like, that needs to be, like, a personal conversation. Like, it's, you have to have personal experience with that to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Some of the other terms you used yesterday, we're going from gender identity and gender dysphoria. I can't believe I have to ask this next question, but I think we need to at least make it clear. So why should followers of Jesus show compassion for those who are struggling in this area?
This is like my one thing that I was like, I gotta say this on the podcast. I have a relationship with somebody who would identify as being a part of the transgender community. And I don't want to speak on the behalf of this person or the community because I don't identify in this way. But from my understanding, a big majority of this community feels and have backed this up, that because they are a part of this community, they are not they're not meeting the requirements that a Jesus follower needs to meet in order to encounter Jesus. They're not welcome in a church. They're not welcome in authentic community with people who love the Lord. And I just have to say, for anybody who is in the transgender community, if that is your experience, there are no requirements for you to begin a relationship with Jesus. He wants to meet you exactly where you are. And it's not just for that community, it's for every single person.
Yeah.
Like, we read Romans 8, read Romans 10. Like, it's so simple. So your gender identity, any gender, any stereotype, anything like that is not a barrier for you to have a relationship with Jesus. And that is so important. He wants to meet you exactly where you are at. He's not waiting for you to arrive at a
You don't have
typical,
to have it all figured out.
You don't have to be like a cis, straight, whatever person in order to encounter Jesus and in order to have a relationship with him. He wants to have a relationship with you just as much as any of his other image-bearing children. And I think that is just so important for us to be able to communicate to especially the transgender community.
Yeah. So just to piggyback on that just a little bit, I would say, because I could almost hear the pushback on that. And,
I'm sure.
And yet we wouldn't put a restriction on anyone else. I mean, the great hymn of the altar call is "Just as I Am." It doesn't get much more traditional than that particular hymn, and yet most people have classifications of, oh yeah, just as you are, but not that.
Yeah.
And we would not say that to anyone who's a murderer, an alcoholic, what you name, whatever the thing is, the behavior is, the whatever it is. We wouldn't say, oh, well, get that sorted out and then come to Jesus. And yet we tend to do that with the issues that we are not struggling with.
Yeah.
Oh, 1,000%. I think it is very dangerous and becomes very arrogant to think that like my sin is not as bad as
I don't
the
have
next sin, or
Right.
my choices are not as bad as this choice, or how they're living their life compared to how I'm living my life. And it's like, oh, grace is for me, but grace isn't for this, and Jesus is for me, and Jesus isn't for them.
Right.
Like it's so wild in my head to think that. But I also understand like people get just stuck in the roots of that and in the weeds of that.
Yeah.
And that's what this series is bringing, I think, to the surface, is people trying to wrestle with that. So even in what you said, if you feel opposite of that,
Right.
we still want, like, Jesus is still for
Yes,
you. Like
absolutely.
Jesus is still like
Yes.
this series is still for you too.
Correct.
Because we understand it's a wrestling match on both sides.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's polarizing.
Yeah.
That's what this is about.
And like, there's so many, I mean, you go back into like even just looking at who Jesus's disciples were. He had people all over the spectrum who were, for the political overturning of Rome. He had like the peacekeepers. He had he had all of these people. So it's not just, for the marginalized.
Yeah.
It's for everybody. And that again is just you have to wrestle and you have to understand the scandal of the gospel. It is not complicated. It is so simple, and it is for everybody. And I think that is just so important. And for people, all people, like there's no moving forward until you really understand the depth of Jesus just continuing to widen the table for everybody, not just who we think we want to invite to dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thoughts on it are like more from like a mental health perspective.
Yeah. It's good.
And like, why should followers of Jesus show compassion? The studies done by the National Institutes of Health have found that 82% of trans people have considered suicide, 40% have attempted it, and the highest suicidality rates are amongst trans youth. So those percentages are shocking. And one of the, it's called the interpersonal theory of suicide, is that suicidality is thwarted by belongingness and like having a community. And so to be a church that says like, you are welcome here, we love you as you are, like that is suicide prevention. That is
Right.
saving lives.
That's so good.
And to show that compassion, especially to our youth, is so, so, so important.
yes.
Absolutely.
That
So good.
that gave me chills. Yeah. That's that was a really good word.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't need community? We were
Right.
created for that.
Yes. Everyone.
Everyone. Who wouldn't we show compassion to?
Right.
Right. That's the quote when I read that. Why
Yeah.
would we not?
Why would we
Yes.
not?
Why would we not?
Well, and I think, like you mentioned, there is a fear of like, oh, well, we don't want our youth to make these irreversible, traumatic, life-changing decisions at such a young age. But I think there's also like an understanding that, it's not a spur of the moment, impulsive decision where, a student is going to say, I'm trans, and then we're going to go to the hospital and get surgery. Like being compassionate and supportive
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean making those impulsive decisions. Like it is a journey, it's a process. Typically it starts with pronouns, and even just that simple step of respecting a person's pronouns. If on their journey and they realize, maybe after a month they're like, oh, I don't like this. Like there's no trauma, there's no irreversible decision there. Like I consider it to be like, when I was in 6th grade, I went by Steffi. Steffi.
Nice.
Yikes.
Please do not call me that. But I look back on that and it's like kind of funny for someone who, maybe they were assigned female at birth and they go a month with he, him pronouns. If they're like, yeah, I don't like that, down the line, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I did that thing for a little
Yeah.
while and it was kind of ridiculous. But
Yeah, and that's so good. And that's part of what I was saying yesterday, like give yourself some space and time, like you don't have to rush off and make some of those decisions. And I know like this is starting to get on the edge of some of the politics of it, which is a little bit even more divisive if that's possible. But where states are, and parents are being excluded from their kids' decisions around all of these things. I mean, those are other debates, and I have strong opinions on some of that
Right.
stuff.
We know they're real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we know that that's real too.
Yeah, they're
so like,
there.
I don't want to be super
Right.
dismissive of all of that. And like
Correct.
most of the school board discussions are around parental engagement on these things, which I think is critical. I think it is critically important that parents are engaged in those conversations. But I also think, as I challenged parents yesterday a couple of different times, parents need to lean into that relationship with their kids. And unfortunately, like in some situations, and this is what makes it these, blanket decisions that are being made around laws so not good. And I get it, laws are like black and white, but situations are not. And so like, a parent who's going to become abusive or angry or toss a kid out of the home for something
Right.
like this, those laws are intended to protect these people. But in the process of intending to protect those kids, it's disenfranchising parents from their relationship with their kids who are in healthier environments. And so like even the conversations that we're having around that, they're not quite as simple as,
Right.
and that's what's making people so upset.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. And it's a local story, it's a national story. And I'm not being dismissive of all of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all that stuff we understand is real.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're
Yeah.
sweeping that under the rug. It's
No.
just that's the only conversation we ever hear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can find that conversation anywhere.
Right.
And
But-
now what we're doing is from a perspective of a
Yes.
follower
Correct.
of Jesus.
Yes.
And,
And-
a community of faith.
And you said it yesterday. I'm a father. Like have conversations with your kids.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that whole thing again. Is like if I am putting the accountability on the church to raise my kids
Yeah.
in the theology that I need them to be in, or how they're going to love Jesus, there's a part for that.
Sure.
But it's in the home. Like it's my responsibility in
Right.
my home. It's my wife's responsibility to show them who Jesus is, and the church comes alongside of that. I mean, you
Correct.
guys preach that in BK all the time,
Right.
and in Next Gen. So like keeping that in mind is like your Facebook post isn't going to change your kid's life.
Right.
Like you having a conversation at dinner with them is you putting their iPad up. Believe me, I'm speaking to I'm the choir there. Like putting their iPad up for a minute and have a conversation. Let them get off Xbox and stuff. So like that's where those conversations are
Yeah.
going to change a lot of things.
And let me just, I want to repeat something that I said yesterday just to make sure that it actually gets heard. You may not be talking to your kids about these particular subjects, but they're watching you respond to what's happening
yeah.
on the political landscape. And if you're responding with vitriol and anger and just bashing an entire community of people in your response to how this is playing out culturally, you are unintentionally saying to your kids that if they are feeling a certain way, it's not safe to go to mom and dad and talk about this thing. So you really need to guard your own heart in your home even. Like we need to be so careful and so intentional on this, because I think your child will start to feel isolated even at home. No one would ever want to do that. And yet we're unintentionally doing that by how we're responding to social and political things going on around us in our homes. And we just need to watch ourselves.
Yep.
Very, very true. The last thing you talked about quite a bit yesterday was the stereotypes, gender stereotypes. Thought it was interesting, the blue and the pink. But how can we celebrate kind of how God's created us in our in uniqueness? He's created males and females while not assigning character and personality traits that may be a little bit more fluid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to input on that one. But yeah, my whole thing was just to say, like, what's actually fluid is gender roles and stereotypes. You know, like that's pretty fluid. And so allowing your kids to not fit into a mold and celebrating even if they're not fitting in a mold could be a really great thing. And there are I gave a couple of biblical examples, butchered it a little bit in the first service, got it right in the second service. I just think that's part of what I was just trying to convey is, if your child doesn't fit what you think the gender stereotype is, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong. You don't have to automatically start panicking and try to reprogram your kid. Maybe they're just being true to who God wired them to be. You know, Jacob hanging at the house, cooking with mom.
Right. Or maybe you have 2 older sisters and you just got to play with Barbie sometimes.
That too.
I mean, it is what it is.
I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add.
Yeah, no, I really liked how you talked about gender roles and gender stereotypes and like on both ends of the spectrum where like if you have a son who wants to play with Barbies, it doesn't mean that he's trans and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. Like just kids want to play and imagination. Like that's so important to just, allow your child to be who they are. And like you said, lean into that relationship because it's an opportunity to create a connection and a bond with your child.
Yeah,
really good.
I think this conversation is even important for adults because it starts in childhood for sure, but I think our culture kind of really hammers down those stereotypes through adolescence and even adulthood. I myself, in a lot of ways, would say I'm not the personality traits and the giftings that the Lord has given me would probably be historically considered more masculine.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time, there are periods throughout my life where I felt if I'm not fitting into this mold that I've been given, there's got to be something wrong with me. I really need to work on toning it down, or I really need to work on fitting how I feel
I think you do need to tone it down. But still.
Hear it once, I'll hear it
Keep going.
5,000 more times. But oh man, the boldness in that situation probably so there's that inner voice until the Lord just kind of was like, Lauren, this is, you are completely who I've created you to be.
A masterpiece.
Yes. And you don't have to be like all the other ladies in your life, which is not a bad thing, but you can be you fully and live out your identity and live out your giftings, live out your passions, all your personality exactly as you are. And it's okay if it doesn't fit into a box. That's totally fine. It doesn't make me less feminine, I've learned. It might just be a little bit different, and that's totally fine.
Really
and I
good.
think that and I think as a kid, my parents did a really good job of not stifling that. So I didn't feel it maybe in childhood. But then as I went to a conservative Christian college and all of those things, I was like, is it me? Because it might be.
Your parents are pretty great.
Oh yeah, they're great too. But yeah.
Very good.
So it translates into adulthood too.
Yeah, it really does. Guys, thanks for the conversation. That was awesome. Appreciate it. I'm sure there's hours and hours more that we could possibly talk about all of the things, but that's all the time we have for today. Join us Sunday. Doug is talking about science.
Ooh.
And
That's a shocker.
You can be with us at 9 and 10:45, so we'd love for you to join us. I don't love science, but listening to Pastor Doug's message, it's really good. So come check it out. It's for everybody. And we'll see you next week. Go be love.